Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Babes, one of the funniest movies I've seen in theaters. Ooh, I can't even remember the last time we saw a really funny movie in theaters.
I laughed so hard. I did like my annoying laugh. Like, it's not a barking laugh, but when I find something so funny, I just have a really loud laugh.
It's like a sharp, ha, and then it comes down a little bit.
Is that really what it sounds
Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Is that what I sound like?
But what the movie is about, it's about this girl who gets pregnant from a one-night stand and then has to tackle single motherhood. And she has this best friend that they've been friends since childhood.
Yeah.
And now she is kind of looking to her for advice because she is a mom of a 3-year-old and she just had a newborn baby. And that's kind of where the movie kicks off.
In one of the greatest scenes of all time.
Which a great comedy, I feel, has to have a big opening to really hook you in. And this movie really wasted no time in getting right to the action and right to the laughs, which I think is what I ended up really enjoying about this movie, is there are so many comedic things all the way throughout the movie. It doesn't really let up in its 90-minute runtime. And the fact that the cast is primarily all women telling a story that I feel really hasn't been told this way, because there have been pregnancy movies, unexpected pregnancy
Knocked
movies.
Up.
There's even
Juno.
your Junos. I have an entire list of my favorite movies about unexpected pregnancies. It has now entered my top 5 in that list. So we'll get into that later. But what did you love about the movie?
5 out of 5. All the stars, no notes. It was so funny. And when we saw it, there was like a before the film screening streamed from New York with the main leads and the director, hosted by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And the director, Pamela Adlon, was talking about how people have called it like a raunchy comedy. And she was like, I don't see it as raunchy comedy. Like, it's about being pregnant and giving birth and like things women go through. And it was not raunchy. Like, there's some scenes, but it's not graphic. It's literally just like, I don't know how to describe it other than giving birth is not like,
it's just what
graphic.
happens.
It's just what happens, and it's what women do.
I found it interesting, yes, that it's probably put in that category of raunchy comedy. It is rated R, probably more due to the fact of the language. Obviously, when making a baby, there's some things that go into making a baby that tend to be more on the adult side as far as the rating. So that's why it has that R rating.
But they didn't even really show that.
No, they didn't.
They didn't.
Like, there's no nudity in this movie.
Yeah, it's implied, but it's not even showed.
I honestly think it's more because of the language.
We know I love a foul-mouthed film.
You do. But I think it's interesting to put it in that category of raunchy comedy when it isn't that. It's telling the story of pregnancy, and what happens in that just happens to fall when you would categorize it an R-rated movie, which I think is weird. I think unfairly rated R, if that is why they are calling it raunchy. Language is a different thing, but I think it is used so well in this movie because I think you can make a comedy that leans a lot on curse words to like make it funny and make it the punchline of the joke. But I feel like overall it is used to show how close they are and is one of my favorite representations of a long-standing friendship.
I loved their relationship as best friends because they were just like, they would talk to each other about everything. They were like, we're family. I loved that. Like, it reminded me, I call my best friend for the most random things. I had an eye doctor appointment and I couldn't decide what pair of glasses I want. So I called my best friend to decide for me. Last year when our air conditioning went out, I was like standing on the aisle of Target crying because I couldn't pick out a box fan. And I just called her and I was like, pick one out for me. And I just loved this like female friendship and the bond that they had and the things they'd been through and just that they supported each other through that. It was more a story of like female friendship and going through pregnancy and birth together. And I loved it. And it was just so funny.
It does show the closeness of their relationship. And I guess another thing that landed on the raunchy side, they don't even show it, but they talk about taking a picture of their bowel movements and sending it to each other. That's how close they are in this movie.
Yes, they did talk about that. They also talked about they did examine each other to measure each other's cervixes to see how far along they were. But again, none of that showed. And I don't think that's raunchy. That's literally just labor and childbirth. And I feel like what's funny, and I'm probably opening a can of worms here, but I feel like men would consider that raunchy. And it's like, yeah, because you don't have to go through it. Like, that's just a part of life for women. And, like, men are so privileged to not have to do that.
It'd be like if you're talking about your period and a guy gets uncomfortable, just because that's like makes him uncomfortable, it would fall into the raunchy category. It's just that's what you guys deal with.
I did make you buy tampons early on in our relationship because I just like needed to know you were chill with that.
It's no problem. It's something you buy at the store. You shouldn't feel weird about it.
You also once went above and beyond and asked a girl in the aisle if you were buying the right ones. And I was like, damn, I got to marry this guy.
Yeah, it's never been weird for me. And I didn't even grow up. I mean, I had a sister and a mom, but it wasn't like so talked about that I would feel like there was something I was exposed to early on that made me feel comfortable with it. It was just like, it's you. Like, I'm going to do anything you need. It's just buying something at the store. I don't know why some guys just make a big deal about it. It's really not.
You're literally just buying it. You're not using
Yeah.
it.
Hey, if I needed it for a nosebleed, I would use it. But the movie stars Ilana Glazer, who I knew primarily from Broad City, one of the best Comedy Central shows that I watched in the 2010s. It also stars Michelle Buteau as her best friend in the movie, and Hassan Minaj, who
was born to wear a sweater vest in a film.
It looks great in tech wear.
He does.
And this is the first time I've seen him have a significant role in a movie. He's been a lot of different side characters in different movies. He was in the Jennifer Lawrence movie, No Hard Feelings. But this was my first time really get to see him as an actor because I know him more as a comedian. Overall, what I loved about his character was him just being a genuinely good dude.
He was. He was such a nice husband and dad. He was so sweet.
And I just loved their relationship of her struggling with motherhood, how hard it is to have two kids, a newborn, also going back to work, and then him also having a career, them trying to find childcare. But at the core of it, they were just so in love with each other and respected each other so much, and also could identify that they were both having a really hard time navigating all those feelings. There was a scene of, them together kind of having this, what are we doing moment? And this is so hard. But at the core of it, it was just that they loved each other. And I think I just really loved that relationship.
I did too. It was honestly so nice to see a film portray parenthood, not just motherhood, but parenthood and like them as a team. And there's obviously things that like he couldn't do, but he was stepping up in the places he could. And like he knew her career was important to her. And she was like, I need to get out of the house and I need to work and do these things. And he respected that. And I hope that's the storyline that movies continue to portray and not just the trope of like wife has baby, wife quits job. Like, I just think that's so important to show that like it is a struggle. It is very much a struggle. We talk about that all the time of when the day comes of when we have kids, like how are we going to make that work? And I think the thing is you do make it work, but like it is a struggle. And I loved seeing it portrayed in such a healthy way in a comedy, because they could have gone the opposite way. Like the movie was meant to be funny, but I think choosing to portray that healthy relationship really set a good tone. And Ilana Glazer's character is kind of the opposite of that. She's navigating an unplanned pregnancy, and I think they were like two sides of the coin, but they really showed up for each other in ways. And it wasn't without its moments of like, this is hard to be your friend and a mom and a wife. But I think they really like valued their friendship so much that it was worth it to work on it.
And I like how her character changed through the course of the movie and how she goes from maybe being a little naive and thinking it's going to be easy to realizing, oh, this is a real serious thing. And then also realizing at times she's leaning a little bit too much on her friend. And I just thought that from beginning to end, I saw so much development that while I was laughing at all the things happening, which they were turned up to 10 a lot of the times in the ridiculousness, but you also have that emotional level of growing with this person. So that is something I haven't really seen in a movie like this about an unplanned pregnancy, where maybe like a Knocked Up had mostly comedy, but it's also from the guy's point of view. And in that movie, the female character is kind of seen as a drag because she doesn't want to let the guy grow up. And she's the one taking it more seriously.
That was also the era of just like portraying Katherine Heigl as the worst in every movie.
Yeah, I feel like she got the raw end of the deal in that movie, just on the way her character was portrayed. But in this one, just showing her character a little bit more three-dimensional, I thought was the perfect way to approach it. It is directed by Pamela Adlon, who I knew primarily from Louie. She also did a TV show called Better Things. But I think what other people might not realize is she's the voice of Bobby Hill.
I will not be watching Better Things. Apparently it's a great show. I'd never heard of it.
I want to go back and watch seasons of King of the Hill, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. It's just always funny that whenever there's a young kid boy in an animated show, it's usually a female voice, but it's crazy to see her just jump into that voice. So overall, what would you give? You give it a 5 out of 5, no notes?
5 out of 5, no notes. 5 out of 5, expensive sushi rolls. I would like to say, as much as I sometimes romanticize living in New York, I don't think I could be pregnant and live in New York. There's a scene, this is not a spoiler, where she's walking up like 4 flights of stairs in her building, like 8 months pregnant, carrying groceries. And I'm like, that looks brutal.
It does seem really hard to be pregnant in New York.
So hard.
And we go to New York and love it, but we're there for a short amount of time. We haven't experienced what it's like to...
We don't have strollers.
Yeah.
We don't have kids on a subway.
Or even just the other things of living somewhere, of like buying groceries and hauling those home.
Also, the scene of her trying to take her baby home in a cab.
Oh, yeah. I think about that, too, of like that drive from the hospital home. I forgot. I think it is in Knocked Up whenever they go home from the hospital and he's like driving 5 miles an hour because he's like, nope, I'm taking it easy. I think I would give it, what I find when recommending comedies, if I go too high, people are going to expect the most hilarious movie ever. And this is a movie that I laughed at. But just to manage expectations, I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5 car seats.
There you go.
Because I think it's one that probably isn't going to get the attention it deserves. And I also feel that it's one that when people are always wanting to see an original movie, especially comedies, people have been saying there's no good comedies anymore. They're out there. You just have to look for them. And they might not be in the same formula that they were back in the 2000s when we all thought, well, a certain type of joke was funny. They have evolved, and I think this is a really great step in the right direction of making comedies that everybody can watch and enjoy and laugh at. And I feel that even if it doesn't do so well in theaters, once this movie goes to streaming, it's going to crush.
I already want to watch it again.
And that's a sign of a good movie. And it's also a sign that seeing everybody else in the theater just kind of makes it funnier too, because when you go watch a movie and there are other people laughing, it makes you want to laugh more. So I feel like we also had the best experience of seeing it in a crowded theater.
And I will say, if anyone's listening to this podcast and you find yourself wondering when we are going to have children, not anytime soon from watching that film.
Oh yeah, that will flood the comments. Oh, that did, yeah. It shows you how hard it is. Not just the pregnancy but even just having kids.
Yeah.
And finding them, somebody to take care of them.
Childcare.
Oh my gosh. That's a whole other thing in this movie. I would love to spoil a scene, but you got to experience it.
You do have to experience it.